Hi viewers, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We are still dealing with dyslexia. We've been talking about types of dyslexia. I've mentioned 4 types already. Today I'll be looking at 2 types of dyslexia. The first to go is auditory dyslexia. Auditory type of dyslexia is the type that presents with difficulty processing the basic sounds of language, that's the phonemes, sounds of letters and group of letters, resulting in very slow or labored reading. What do I mean by that? Someone who has auditory dyslexia has problem with processing the sounds that makes up a language. So even the sounds in the group of words is the problem. So the person has inability to blend the sounds to form words. And when the person is not able to blend sounds to form words, reading is lower, reading skill or reading speed is lower, as well as it becomes burden because it becomes very laborious for the person to read. So when you bring books for someone who has auditory dyslexia to read, is a problem because of the challenges that the person is going to face, the challenges of being able to understand the basic sounds and the words to come up with the proper pronunciation of that word. There are signs that you can see before you say someone has auditory dyslexia. Yes, dyslexia itself has symptoms, signs and symptoms, but for someone who has auditory dyslexia has specific symptoms, which I will be listing for you now. You always see the person has frequent misunderstood of what others are saying. There's that frequent problem of I don't understand what this person is saying. The reason to this is that it's difficult for the person to pick the sounds that make up your words. So as you're speaking, the person is not able to process some sounds and therefore understanding is impaired. So when others are speaking, they'll be like, oh, I don't really understand what you're saying because the inability to process the sounds, to pick the words that you are saying in your language is difficult, has been impaired. There's also difficulty hearing when there's a background noise. So already somebody that is having auditory processing problem and then a background noise added to it, this makes it more difficult because the person will be battling to settle the sounds in the language and also to like shade off the noise from the background to understand. So they always have that issue. Another sign is they often have very difficult for them to process. That's the sound, and the th, the sound is very difficult for them to process. They have frequent scramble. Frequently, they scramble multisyllabic words. What do I mean by they scramble it? They mix it up. So you see them trying to pronounce something like plasticity. They can say plasticity like that. So you see them mix up words. They just scramble it because they are not able to distinctively pick the sounds in the words you are trying to make them pronounce. Another sign and symptom is difficulty following sequence of instructions. For someone who has auditory dyslexia, has problem processing sequence of instruction. For example, if I give 3 parts direction, the person might have problem to process and execute accordingly because the auditory skill linked to the brain is not functioning as it ought to be. Of course, there is weak auditory memory. There's weak auditory memory. The brain is the center of all. So the part of the brain that is responsible for this auditory memory is impaired. And of course, for the last one, they have weak comprehension, just as you hear. Like if I'm speaking, you are hearing me, you are understanding me. For individuals with auditory processing dyslexia have problem with that. They do have problem with quick comprehension of language that is being spoken to them. Another type of dyslexia that we'll be looking at is visual dyslexia. What is visual dyslexia talking about? Visual type of dyslexia is a reading difficulty resulting from the optical problem located in the eyes or the visual processing residing in the brain. Of course, the brain is the center of all. So if the part of the brain that is able to look at objects and then interpret is malfunctioning, is going to affect our reading skills. So the visual dyslexia is already a reading difficulty resulting from the optical, because what you see sends to your brain and then the brain interprets, then you bring it out. So that's what happens with people who have visual dyslexia. They have problem with visual processing, which also affects their reading skills. Are there signs to this? Are there specific signs that occur to visual dyslexia? Yes, of course. And one of it on my list is difficulty tracking across lines and text. For example, someone who has visual processing or visual dyslexia will have problem reading when the person is reading a comprehension, you have problem following line by line. So the person might skip, or even the word for word. Sometimes they will have to be aided by doing finger reading, like pointing word by word to read. If they are not doing that, if they are not reading with their finger, you could just see that they are mixing up, they lose track of the lines of the text that they are reading. Another sign or symptom that we receive with visual dyslexia is that they have difficulty keeping place in text, which is similar to the first one. Difficulty keeping place in text, that's one. Another one is text appear double. For instance, you can see a word, they can see a word and it's appearing double to them, so they are confused. How will I pronounce this? You see, maybe if you are spelling book, the b sound will appear double, the o sound will appear double, the k sound will appear double. How will such a person read things like that? So text can appear double to them. Also, text appear blurred. You see that the text they are reading is blurred. They don't have vivid vision of the text that they are reading. And of course, they have constant headache. They have constant headache because the eye strain is associated with reading, and you see them rubbing off their eye, and there's constant headache of the skipping text is very, very common with them. So they skip text, they have constant headache, the text appear blurred, and you see words or text appearing more than one, that's double, even some triple, and they always have this difficulty following track, and they may skip up lines when they are reading. Those are the common signs that we see with visual processing dyslexia. Are there hope for people who have dyslexia, any type of dyslexia? Yes, there are, of course. People can always be helped. Like we said, the first thing is to first know whether the child has dyslexia. There are some basic tests that can be done. Of course, not blood tests. There are some checkers that can be used to check, oh, this child has dyslexia. And for proper intervention, it is very, very important that you know the type of dyslexia that the person has, because that will help to aid intervention. So you narrow it down. Which type of dyslexia does this person have? Is it visual dyslexia? Is it auditory dyslexia? Is it double deficit dyslexia? Is it all the C's that I have mentioned so far? So when you are able to pick the exact dyslexia type that the person has, you plan for intervention. We are here to also help you, and I'm glad to tell you that people who have dyslexia that are with us are doing well, and they're doing well with their reading skills, they're doing well with their memory skills. There is hope for them. When a child has been diagnosed with dyslexia, do not give up. However, we say that early diagnosis is key. Early intervention is key. Do not give up on that child that has dyslexia in your classroom. The child can be helped. Please, if you know that this information has really helped you, or you're going to use this to help in your profession, whether you're a teacher, you're a parent, click on the notification bell so that you'll be among those that will get our next video once it drops. Please like and share, because someone somewhere needs this information to help that child. Thank you, and keep watching our videos as they drop.